Hello, and welcome to Show Studios Paris Fashion Week Roundup. I'm content editor Callum Knight, and I'm joined digitally by the amazing Hetty Malik.
Hi.
Kind of odd summing up in Paris after an odd season and an odd year. But actually, as per always, Paris seems to have summed up all the themes that were presented in New York, London, and Milan.
I was really pleasantly surprised, actually. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good week.
To be honest, just as a bit of a preface, actually, it pays to go last with the new series of videos and formats because that extra week is basically your time to shoot. And you have your collection in the week earlier. So I mean, it's all kind of schedule-wise. You want to be in Paris now. That timing's going to work out for you better. But we had a real mix of physical, digital, somewhere in between. We also had a mix of brands going completely left of field, trying to attract new markets, some successfully, some a little bit manically. And yeah, I mean, kind of we had a little bit of everything. I kind of wanted to start off with the people who really addressed the kind of state of the world head on, first and foremost, because these ended up feeling like the most irrelevant collections.
I think it's nice to kick off with Marine Serre, actually, because she's really interesting. She's actually kind of always been kind of predicting this moment. You know, she always calls it kind of future wear, and we've had very kind of apocalyptic shows before, and she's always kind of been preparing for this kind of post-human moment, which we're not quite in yet, but this was a fashion film, and I thought what was really great was that she always kind of presents these cults, and in the film kind of opens this kind of naked person on a kind of table, and then as we're led through the film, we get led through kind of different parts of a new world, which lead us through different cults, which are all part of the Marine Serre world. And I thought this season she really refined each cult and just really kind of transported us to this, you know, really played on the moment of everyone's feeling a bit weird and really kind of took that and ran with it.
I mean, Marine's been such an incredible storyteller since her first collection. And at first, I think people kind of took the apocalyptic vibe as an aesthetic, not a message. The last few seasons, she's really hammered that home. Even in her last collection in Autumn Winter 20, she said, we're preparing, but we don't know what for. We do now. But Amor Fati, I think, was a really lovely way to actually continue this narrative and conversation in a different format, because there's only so much you can say on a runway. In the same way you can say different, but still limited amounts of things on film. So I think this actually gave us a really nice different angle into her world. And again, opening on that dissection table with this person is such a graphic image, especially for 10 a.m. on the first day.
Yeah. I know, I remember opening it and I was like, Christ.
But, you know, it was a really, you know, she took us through this exceptional world, kind of like the exceptional circumstances we're going through, laboratory, a natural landscape, and this underground water world with all these people following. It was a really visceral experience watching this. It was very well done. The product behind it, I actually thought was classic Marine. And I don't want to say safe, because there was actually really interesting explorations into shape and structure, especially around the midriff with big 3D explosions of twirling shapes. But also, you know, we've got the moon print.
That was a really nice that she's done a new kind of lozenge like version of it. And I think it's actually a really successful iteration, because I think that print's become so kind of all over Instagram and stuff. And I think, you know, like seeing quite a lot of counterfeits as well. And now I think she's kind of reclaiming it and really developing it and maturing the brand. And I think that reflects through the rest of the collection.
And the thing is, and I'm spending so long on Marine, but it is such a brilliant collection, is that actually the process and the production of these clothes is ethical as one can be. She's always striving for that. She's releasing videos on how all the denim's made. It's all repurposed. All these carpets and things that the team find and re-updo. They do chairs. That, you know, they really, because they're a young company, they've built their business with sustainability and kind of social consciousness at the forefront. So actually, you can feel good buying these clothes. You can feel good loving these clothes because they are working kind of within a sustainable mindset. So, you know, it's tick, tick, tick from Marine Spring Summer 21. Another person who, again, has always played on the darker side of things is Rick, with his collection that he showed on the Venice Lido. again, really focusing in on this kind of on the terrifying side of what the world is today, but also not trying to find beauty in it in a way to suppress it, but trying to interact with the reality of the.
I think it felt really defiant. Like that's what I really got from it. It was this kind of, you know, designing creativity in the face of kind of adversity and being defiant.
Well, and accepting the circumstance.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that fashion will speak especially Paris will speak, even though this was actually, but in the Paris Fashion Week schedule, will speak so openly on these things. And actually Rick's press release and the conversations he had around this were incredibly honest as a designer, as a person. But actually, again, if you strip all that back, you get this incredibly tough kind of outerwear with these huge ripped off shoulders, lots of masks incorporated into glasses, and then little scarves as well. Quite a crazy color palette, not a color palette you'd expect from Rick, with like alarm red and bubblegum pink, these amazing stilettos that he's turned into thigh highs with the big kind of what's it? Not a garter, a grate, like a cargo.
Yeah, they're amazing, those boots. I think they're really great.
The strength was palpable from Venice all the way in London. And I wish I could be someone who didn't know what was going on.
It was, as you say, kind of felt strong and defiant without reading the press release and without knowing that narrative, you know, like those clothes really made kind of a statement for now and really connected with people.
And I think I hope that this will really get a lot of people looking into it who possibly haven't felt connected to the darker side of his work, which I know can turn people off, and don't think it should, but it can. You know, if you're in another kind of realm of fashion, that can seem quite out there, but actually I think this will really connect with a lot of people. Balenciaga, who showed their pre-collection in the end of the season after their kind of whole schedule's been turned upside down, didn't get to release Haute Couture in July, which was a massive shame. So they showed pre-collection, and it was about this idea of walking around at night during Paris lockdown.
It was like a music video and I loved it. The soundtrack is this kind of electronic song called I Wear My Sunglasses at Night. And so all the models are wearing sunglasses, which is kind of also this nice kind of nod to that fashion uniform of wearing sunglasses, but then you're in this kind of empty Paris where Paris Fashion Week isn't happening. And the collection itself was like a couture kind of take on working from home, which kind of also fits with Demna. You know, he's always done a kind of casual take on luxury. And again, this felt really fitting. When we were doing our review the other day, we were both saying like, oh, there's those bits in there that you kind of having that kind of desire to dress up at the moment, but you've also got your kind of hoodies and your kind of really roomy tailoring, which you can kind of still be comfortable in, you know?
And there's all fun plays on the idea of make, do, and mend. And there's things that look like coats that look like fur coats, but actually are made out of shoelaces, kind of mesh chainmail that's made out of basketball hoop kind of nets. And there's just lots of really fun plays kind of interspersed between really classic Demna product, plays on the Balenciaga archive silhouettes, but modernized. And it just felt like a real synthesis, you know, and not to say that it hasn't before, but a really strong collection that spoke in a lot of different ways. Yeah. Again, sustainability was put first and foremost in this collection, or as much as it can be if you're making new product. But then also comfort, this idea that actually we all kind of need to dress the world we have, not escape into fantasy.
It felt really relevant, I think. It managed to engage with the idea of kind of luxury and glitz and glam while also feeling relevant and having those grounded pieces as well.
Another brand that I want to talk about, which we definitely would be talking about this season anyway, who actually really managed to tone their launch, was Givenchy and Matt's first collection. I think normally when a designer comes into a new house, think Riccardo at Burberry, where every single billboard you saw had the new logo on it and there were teddy bear inflatables everywhere. Matt's done a very clever thing by actually really toning down this launch. I don't know if it was always planned to be like this, or considering everything that's going on in the world, he didn't feel it was appropriate. But for someone who's made a career kind of not working in fashion circles and instead kind of working in larger cultural, you know, he works with huge music artists and plans stage shows, you know, he works on a mass basis. It would have been weird for him to just totally ignore what was going on in the world.
I also think it's really clever because I think if I think back to kind of loads of those kind of major moments like Virgil at Louis Vuitton, or even kind of going back to kind of McQueen at Givenchy, I think you can always remember like 3 or 4 maybe key looks max, and then what the show itself kind of looked like probably sticks in your memory more. But with this, I can already kind of remember so many parts of it because I feel like I've engaged with it because of that format it's presented in. And I think what also is great about that is that it really translates so easily for everyone who's having to view this digitally.
For sure. And yeah, as you say, you've engaged with the clothes, not the showmanship.
Yeah.
And I think this set a really lovely kind of basis and precedent for Matt's tenure at Givenchy. And I said the idea of a collection zero, and really this collection honors the designers before him with the kind of horns in the shoes that came from Lee, and then also Hubert's kind of backless, beautiful, and then the color palette as well. But it's actually really very him, and a really lovely moment to consolidate, especially considering he had 2 months. So I think that was a real success and a real testament to actually sometimes less is more. And it
really was.
So much.
It wasn't like a boring, you know, I think lookbooks, if you just do that, especially kind of against a white background, they can risk being kind of a boring afterthought, and this very much stood on its own and was kind of center stage.
It's also a testament to how much Givenchy believes in him to allow him to do that. I'm sure when he said, I just want to shoot it against a white background with some nice lighting, they
were like, you can do what you want. You can do whatever you want.
It's a brave move, and one that actually, as you say, puts the clothes center stage, puts the message center stage, and has no distractions. And
that shows confidence as well from Matt. So I think that's really kind of sets stuff up.
Yeah. And then we also had some brands that really kind of wanted to take this moment again, I guess maybe a bit more with people having a bit more time on their hands to actually really address their brand and their brand codes, where they've come from, which you saw a lot in London as well. But the first one I want to talk about, especially because I was involved in it, is Margiela and their Sealed with a Loving Kiss 2.
This was so lovely. I'm going to be gushy even though, you know, I think give a bit of backstory. What John always talks about kind of the memory of and where these clothes kind of come from, and clothes having this history to them. And that's what Spork 1 kind of started to explore. And I think this one is really, what's really great about this one is that narrative really takes the center stage. So you've got this kind of, I won't give too much away, but it's kind of this like narrative of kind of this memory that John had from a research trip of kind of tango dancers that he was kind of searching for ages to try and find like the real authentic thing, and then kind of found it up this kind of alley like up some old stairs kind of at the top of a shop or something, which I just love. And that kind of narrative weaves through the whole film, as well as this idea of a kind of impending marriage of one of the tango dancers. Nick obviously filmed it. Cal worked on it. So Cal, I think it'd be really nice to hear from you, like what you kind of think kind of some of the key takeaways from the film.
I mean, we never really sat down and discussed and said, this is how we want it to be. But actually, one of the things that we worked out in the edit and we were so excited about and came from one of our first Zoom calls with John was actually this was a time to really explore what all these numbers meant. And he says it quite a few times, and we really hammered home the point with graphics and kind of John's explanation, but really explaining how this all is kind of a filtered down pyramid from artisanal, where we try out new techniques, then that goes into the co-ed, which again is still reasonably experimenting and all of that. And then once that's been put out into the world, depending on the reaction, things get brought down into the Iconics lines, which are the kind of the collection lines, and then they'll stay there forever because, you know, they're pieces that people know and love. So instead of it, you know, so you have this kind of fantasy at the top of this pyramid, if you like, of artisanal, which is just pure creation, but it's not without its human counterpoint where people can actually interact with them, buy these clothes and love these items. So that was really, and there's all this fantasy, there's amazing stories of tango, there's all these amazing moments of seeing John and his team working away.
I think actually what really comes through in this is that idea of things being woven together, all these different strands. Like one thing that this season really is about weaving the artisanal and the co-ed kind of together, and that comes very literally in some parts of the film. You literally see John talking about how you'll pull a layer back of a coat and you'll find an element of artisanal there. So I think you kind of get the best of both from this. You get this kind of narrative and romance and kind of get a peek into John's mind, which is so full of kind of fantasy and narrative. But then
I'm so aware of the people of his crew and the large.
Because then you get this kind of peek into Margiela in Paris and everyone working on it, and literally their hands making stuff, which is just so incredibly rare, especially when these clothes are so much about literally every stitch and every layer. Literally.
I do think that actually this time, and lots of brands have done this, was really a time to, I think everyone was quite aware that actually whilst we wouldn't all be together, we might all be a bit more connected and have a bit more space in our heads to take more on than, oh, this is my new shoulder that I've done for this season and the colour palette is pink. Whatever it was going to be. I think people thought if no one listens this season, then it's not going to happen ever. So people really pushed out their communications and tried to re-emphasize what they were doing. Wells Bonner also did it really incredibly, slightly more subtle than our huge graphics in Margiela. But her show Essence, her collection video Essence, was absolutely gorgeous, shot by Gino Edwards. It was a real reaffirmation of all the beauty of Wells Bonner and the kind of soul that's at the center of that brand that makes Wells Bonner what we know and love.
I really like as well that she's now said that it's kind of the second part in what's going to be a trilogy. So it's leading off more 2020, which is also looking at kind of dancehall culture in the 70s and those kind of links between specifically Jamaica and Britain. And that she's kind of developed this as kind of another stage in that narrative, and that's being developed.
And what I loved about this collection, kind of narrative aside, because the narrative is so honest and presented in such a different way to the kind of gaze we normally get on stories about the diaspora, and it was actually presented in an incredibly honest way. But the clothes are so precise but not precious, and I think
so such a development for her.
And I think sometimes I felt that Grace's clothes can sometimes be quite rigid, which I understand is quite often the point, but this slight relaxation, not to say they're not precise, but it connected more this season than it has before. Again, even Adidas collabs, which are really going to do incredibly well. Everything felt right. Everything wove together really well this season for her.
Like some stuff there's that kind of plaid blue jacket, which at a glance you don't even realise it's the Adidas collab, and it's beautifully structured and it's zipped right up. But then actually if you look closely, it's got the 3 stripes down. And I think she's really found this beautiful juxtaposition between that kind of looser sportswear and then something more tailored and luxury.
For sure. And it's a real success, and possibly one of her best collections, I'd say.
I think it's her best, personally.
Absolutely stunning. Tebe Magugu also had a really interesting collection that was called Counterintelligence, shot by Kristen Lee Moolman and Ibara, which is a kind of dream team. And again, these younger brands like Tebe and Wells Bonner are naturally going to fit into film and digital communications better than their older counterparts, just because of the generations that they're from and their interactions with these mediums. But I mean, that is a pretty dream team for Tebe. Remaking the film. Counterintelligence was looking at South African spies and kind of interviewing old South African spies, which is quite an interesting concept to look at kind of surveillance and disguise in terms of fashion, because you could argue that fashion is disguise.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's always actually really interesting when people in fashion look at surveillance, and I think Tebe's done it in a quite clever way here, because the kind of surveillance he's looking at has this there's something quite sinister about it, and I think there's something actually quite sinister about surveillance in general, So I think it's quite interesting when fashion kind of engages with that.
Mm.
And I like how it's kind of made its way through the whole collection. Like one of the looks has kind of polka dots, but the polka dots are the fingerprints of one of the spies.
I
And I
mean,
it runs through the whole thing. And it's one of the, because quite a lot of people did films of some sort this season. And I'd say this was probably one of the few, aside from the other ones we've talked about, where I was really kind of watched it start to end, didn't look away, you know, I was really pulled into it.
also one of the great things about this collection is how concise it is, and also how quite free of gender it is as well, actually. And that's not kind of spoken upon in any of it, but it just kind of is.
Yeah.
And it seems to kind of transcend gender, which is brilliant, and again something that the younger designers are doing more naturally. Yeah, it's an incredibly concise collection of very rigid, of quite rigid tailoring, again lots of military details considering the subject, and then really gorgeous drapes and straps for some of the looser fits. But I guess it's, what would you say, it's about 15 looks, so beautifully concise, because it doesn't need to say more. It's got it in the film, we've got it in the book, and it's, you know, brilliant, really brilliant.
Really, really great.
We had a few kind of people edging the line of physical and digital, and some kind of moving into interactive spaces. We had the Miu Miu show, which obviously Mucha showed. She showed it in Italy, didn't she? So she showed it in Italy, kind of without a big audience, but then had everyone zoom in, kind of had all her influencers and her friends of the house zoom in.
Like 07 and stuff, and I was like, yes, I'm here for this.
And it was fun and apt for Miu Miu, the same as the collection. We're getting lots of frills, kind of.
I think what worked was because it was meant to be kind of like a sports arena kind of inside set. Made me think of like an indoor basketball court or something, but very Miu Miu, like pink everything, pink and white. And I think what worked was that it wasn't trying to replicate a physical space, but it created this whole new space which was a merger of the two, and it felt fun and lighthearted. You know, you had the people zooming in, but it wasn't trying to replicate a front row. It was like, this is digital, this isn't real, but this is kind of the fun virtual Miu Miu world that everyone can.
The Miu Miu character and the Miu Miu girl.
They did an Instagram filter as well, where you could put your face into the things where the front row was. So I was just like, it's really fun, and they're just, you know, really like playing with this moment, and I thought it was good.
I also, Kiko for women's did a really actually quite somber collection for Kiko if you think of the launch, but of those first collections. But they did a really nice interactive that was quite small, quite low key, but actually just again gave you a little bit of interaction and made the public feel like the designers were thinking of them and thinking of them in this presentation instead of being removed from it.
I really liked it. It was like you couldn't control it with your mouse. You had to press like 3 letters on the keyboard, and it kind of slowly zoom in, slowly move out, and the models would be kind of doing these like weird walks, and it felt like that. It still felt that quirky kind of Kiko vibe, and while letting you engage with it.
And the collection was classic as well, in terms of, we had these really dark midnight blues with pops of lime, and it felt very in keeping, and again just keeping that customer almost fed and connected with. And I think that was kind of the minimum this season, because everyone's had different experiences over the last year, and with lockdown, and everyone's in different situations, but that was kind of the minimum that people were expecting this season, is just for designers to reconnect with their customer again, and with everyone again, just to, I don't know, a little update, a little check-in. We also had LV, which was a bigger digital physical experience for sure. I was shot in a huge mall in Paris with guests, but also green screen that you could control from home. A bit odd.
We spoke about this in our review. I had an experience of watching it where so everything was green screen, and then a film played. Can't remember what it was, skips mind. But I had the experience, and I watched it, that the green screen kept kind of merging with people. So that's just, I found it hard to actually kind of like know what to look at. But I think it's a really interesting concept, and they were kind of the only person to kind of integrate the two kind of digital and physical spaces in that way. So that was really exciting.
Yeah, it's a Wim Wenders film, Wings of Desire.
Yeah, and that's kind of all about voyeurism and stuff. So that was quite interesting to kind of weave that.
Yeah, and just to lean into it, as you say, into the situation we're in. And the collection was looking into, again, these time clashes, that actually really worked this season. There was quite a military, I mean, there quite often is with Guess Here, but there was looks into military, into oversized pieces. And he spoke on non-binary and this idea of not dressing for a man or a woman. However, we said in the review that actually it felt a bit half-hearted or a bit confusing at this point when there are so many brands that are doing this so successfully and looking into the kind of the cut of clothes and actually how the person within, instead of portraying a non-binary wardrobe to the outside, actually how does it work for the body inside?
You can't say that this is a collection kind of actually really, when you look at it, championing non-binary clothing. I don't think it's pushing the boundaries in that sense, but at the same time, it's really important to be having this conversation at somewhere like LV.
And then there were kind of two big shows that I wanted to bring up, which are Chanel and Dior, because these brands, as you said, the younger brands can get involved in different ways and really pull on their audience will automatically know how to do an interactive or how to communicate in that way. But actually Chanel and Dior are two brands that are built on the idea of fashion show and probably have the two of the biggest shows of the season. Both of them had physical shows. I guess we'll start on Chanel with their La La Land. In the review, we discussed this idea of, whether it was too product focused or too narrative focused, and actually it didn't hit either note necessarily amazingly well. Actually, it still just felt odd to see people in a room.
I think it did. I mean, I think going back to that idea that Chanel and Dior kind of do rely on this, at the end of the day, that's probably still the Chanel show, even though I did find it uncomfortable to watch a crowd there who I didn't think were that distanced. It still was, it's probably the most Instagram show I've seen.
Oh, really? So I don't have it.
I just keep seeing that kind of the set, everyone, when you get a massive set like that, everyone's just like, oh, so like that's what, and it doesn't take away, I'm not saying that Chanel at all rides on the shows rather than their clothes, but that is definitely a big part of their, them as a brand is, and how their outreach is through the set. And I think not having a physical show would have been a big kind of miss for them in terms of that.
Well, it's their first communication on the season, and that trickles the way to the socks and the bags. It really dictates everything. So yeah, I do think they really are one of those businesses that really rely on the show. I do, but my thing is with it, and there were beautiful clothes in here, so please do check out the review on Show Studio if you want to kind of talk about the clothes a little bit more. But this collection was a show which already is going to have people's backs up against the wall, and then also didn't speak on any of the things that have been going on in the world, especially in having an incredibly white cast that was so blaringly obvious. And why is this? How has this happened?
Also, on another note, talking about not engaging with kind of the times, just like I would have thought that Chanel would have kind of monetized on like a little pearl trim mask or something, like
I'm sure that.
But I mean, like not engaging with having better casting and not engaging with even just the kind of pandemic we're in, you've got this crowd and then models walking in and out of it. That just, on both accounts, I just felt like it was a bit tone deaf.
There's no amount of fashion or fantasy that can justify it, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
It's harsh, but it's true. And finally, and finally we had Dior, which again, just automatically, it just felt so odd and kind of stuck in the past. What we had was a kind of quite classic Maria Grazia Chiuri collection of long chiffony dresses, flat shoes, real focus on the woman inside the clothes and the life that they lead. But again, it spoke of but skirted around the matters of the moment, the Black Lives Matter movement, the coronavirus, these things that actually are affecting their customers, the people they're communicating to, the people who look up to these brands. And it's such a huge platform. If you're going to chase it with a fashion show, why?
I thought it was also weird because she did another artist collaboration with an artist from the 60s whose work is all about kind of taking mass media slogans and stuff and collaging them, and they were in the stained glass windows of the set. But again, I think this is a kind of frequent thing we see with Maria. missed opportunity to collaborate within the clothes with the artist. And I think on this, you know, working with an artist who's so kind of, you know, she was kind of a feminist and was very much speaking to kind of the politics and the issues of the time. It's weird to kind of engage with that and then actually not engage with our time at all in what you're saying.
For sure. And I just, you know, there's great product in here, and it's, as I said, a really
It
classic.
will sell, they'll love it.
Yeah, but is product the reason to gather at the moment? You know, the galleries are open, sure, but that's to go and express yourself. And this didn't feel like an expression. This didn't feel like something Maria Grazia Chiuri had been yearning to say. This was just another 6-month collection.
Felt like a box.
Yeah, and so sadly, no matter, you know, how beautiful the clothes are and these constructions, these details, there's beautiful bar jackets inspired by the 1957 Japanese ones that Monsieur did himself. Or was it 47? Oh, great.
No, it's 57. 47 was the first one.
But you know, there's beautiful things in there that sadly, through the display of this collection, have been undermined totally,
Right.
which is such a shame. So, as we said at the beginning, Paris Fashion Week, a mixture of everything, some real highs, some kind of missed opportunities and sad lows, but actually an incredibly important and a season I think we'll speak about for a long, long time.
Certainly won't be forgotten.
Definitely will not be forgotten. Thanks for everyone who's been watching all our live reviews on Show Studio and all the panels and our roundups on YouTube. Please do subscribe because there are lots more fashion films and live fashion commentary coming up over the next few months in between now and, oh my God, autumn, winter 21. It's all moving so fast.
It will literally be here in a second.
But that is all from us. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you very, very soon. Bye.